retire or whatever. Will he put an executive order of accepting internationally doctors from China, from all over the world to fulfill our needs?
I mean, it's definitely a possibility, but the truth is that I think that you're going to, every country that has ever done this, that's what's happened, right? If you look at Britain, they've had a tremendous influx of, for example, Indian doctors, right? A lot of folks from India come there and go into the medical profession. It's still not enough, folks, because you have to have a baseline level of education. If you're coming from what is essentially a third world country in India, at least for the poorest members of that society, there are not enough people to fill that gap. The best doctors are still people who are born in America and go to American medical schools. Obama could do that. He could certainly try to bring those folks in, but the truth is that if we're bringing in more qualified immigrants, I don't really have a problem with that as a general matter. I have a problem with unqualified immigrants being brought in. If the people we're bringing in from India and Mexico are people who are going to go to medical school and be doctors, cool. If they're coming here to mooch off state benefits, not so cool. So it's not going to, in other words, it's not going to fill the gap. Obama may try to fill the gap, but the real hidden agenda of Obama, there's a twofold hidden agenda to Obamacare. One is to unionize 21 million people, which is what Obamacare does. It creates 21 million new employees of the federal government, all of whom will end up being unionized, federal and state government. And the second agenda of Obamacare is to bankrupt the private insurance system, which is what Obamacare does. And once it does that, and people aren't getting insurance, then we'll come along and we'll have the same discussion that we just had about Wall Street, right? It's Wall Street's fault that the real estate market tanks, not the government's fault for ordering Wall Street what to do. So it will be the private insurance business's fault that the healthcare system isn't working, not the government's fault for telling them what to do. Boom, national option, and there you are, socialized medicine. That's the magic behind Obamacare.
What drives me absolutely crazy is the cognitive dissonance that leftists has. They're weighed down by this, and they're not intellectually honest. What do you attribute that to? Where did this come from?
Well, I mean, people believe what they want to believe, and it's very difficult for folks to accept facts that disagree with their basic kind of good nature. Liberalism is a very attractive ideology because it suggests that all human beings are basically good at heart. And that they will not be lazy, and that they will not mooch, and that no amount of incentives that you have will make them do so. If you have a welfare system, there will never be welfare queens. If you have an Obamacare system, people won't go to the doctor more often, and the doctors will be happy to cut their own care. It's all based on this very naive vision of what human nature is all about, and that's why the political divide is not really a political divide, it's a human philosophical divide. The conservative belief system is based on the essential motion, what the founders espoused, which is men aren't angels, men aren't devils. That's why you need a system that counteracts, interest with interest. And that's why we need systems in place that do the greatest good for the greatest number and don't incentivize bad behavior. That's the difference between conservatives and liberals. Moving people from that rosy vision of human nature is very difficult. People don't like to do it, especially when you're young and you're idealistic. This is why young people are really stupid. But this is why, I mean, I used to speak for Rock the Vote, MTV's Rock the Vote, and I used to speak on campuses, and I used to get all the time, how do you get more young people to vote? And I say, I don't. I don't want them to. Until they've lived in the real world and paid taxes and had a family and done things of value to society, I want them to sit the hell down.
I listened to your show on KRLA along with your colleagues Michael Medved and Hugh Given, and I hear these constant, very respectful references to President Obama. I don't know anyone else who refers to a president of the opposing party with that title. I'm wondering, is this policy of Salem Communications or KRLA?
No, they don't tell us what to say on the air. I mean, at least not in terms of that, right? I mean, we don't. Salem is a Christian-owned broadcasting network, so we don't talk about things that are risque per se. But yeah, as far as listen, I call President Obama is my president, okay? Because he's the president of my country. I didn't vote for him. He's my president. He's still a jerk, and he's a terrible president. And when I write my columns, I don't tend to call him Mr. Obama or President Obama. I call him Obama because the press called Bush Bush. And so, I'm not going to play by this double standard. Andrew Breitbart, who's a close friend of mine, I was friends with Andrew for 12 years. I met Andrew when I was 16 years old, writing for the UCLA Daily Bruin. And Andrew is still the other anonymous half of Matt Drudge's website. Andrew is big on this, which is don't play by the rules that they set for you. And so, treating Obama with tremendous amounts of respect means very often that you give him more credit than he's due. Now, this is not part of the how to convince liberals discussion, because that doesn't convince liberals. But what it does do is it makes Obama more answerable to the American people, because guess what? I promise you, on the other side, the people who had the most effect on the debate were the extremists on the left during the Bush years. The folks on the right who pushed really hard get results. And by the way, yes, Obama is a jerk. I mean, he is legitimately, I knew people like him at Harvard Law. Okay, I promise he's not somebody you want to have a beer with. Last several decades. The media is worth, on average, 10 points in any election cycle for the left. And yet we've had President George W. Bush, and we've had President Ronald Reagan, and we've had Republican Congresses up the wazoo. That's the power of truth and reason. If we were able to control even a minute percentage more, especially in Hollywood, if we were able to control even a minute percentage more of that debate, we'd be able to win it. But yeah, I mean, these are all winnable arguments. I think he's already sold Israel down there. I mean, I'm not sure what changes. I mean, what he will do is he will sit around until, you know, Iran develops nuclear weapons, and then he will claim that there's balance in the region. And once he claims that there's balance in the region and that there's stasis in the region, Iran will hand off its weapons to a terrorist group. This is what people don't understand about the Iranian nuclear weapon. They're not going to fire a weapon like the Russians did. They're not going to fire a missile that goes from Tehran to Jerusalem. That's not how it's going to work. One of two things will happen. They'll either hand off a nuke to, you know, a terrorist group in the region to use in Israel, or they will use it as a threat in order to force Israel into not competing militarily in a conventional war. Right? They'll use a mutually assured destruction threat in order to, you know, force Israel to essentially not fight back.
Why doesn't Israel fight the nuclear?
Well, I mean, it's easier said than done. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but Bibi's working on it. I mean, Bibi's definitely working on it. The rumor now is that Bibi is going to do it before the election cycle, which would certainly shake things up. It's unclear, you know, to whose benefit that would redound, but you know, I would say that there's a solid shot. Basically, this is what Obama has done as a president. He's forced Israel into a corner because they know that if Obama gets a second term, they will get no support. But if they do it now, he may try to pander to the Jewish vote and at least provide token support to Israel. So Israel has no choice but to try and do something to Iran. Iran, meanwhile, is thinking, okay, well, if Mitt Romney's elected, policy may very well change somewhat radically, so we better accelerate our nuclear program. So what you're getting is both of those sides in conflict because President Obama's weak.
In the context of tonight, do you think you should argue liberal bias with the same people?
No. No. They trust in the Washington Post, they trust the New York Times, and if you say to them that they're biased, then they will say, well, where are you getting your information? It's a worthless argument. What you can do is simply, the best thing you can do, and this is what I tried to do when I was discussing before, quote the Washington Post. You know, quote the New York Times. Because the facts are there. They're just buried in, you know, page 18 instead of on the front page, and they're buried in paragraph 10. I mean, this is what we do at Breitbart. We uncover those buried leads, and we put them front and center, and then give them focus. But, you know, the vast majority of reporting is still done by the mainstream media. It's just that they bury the reporting all the way down at the bottom of the article in tiny print. So, if you can, use liberal press outlets because the left trusts them. Use their trusted sources.
What do you know about the DREAM Act? What can you tell us about the DREAM Act? Okay,
so the DREAM Act is problematic for a number of reasons. The first reason the DREAM Act is problematic is because it doesn't shut the border. I mean, the DREAM Act creates a guest worker program. I'm for a guest worker program. I think everybody wants a comprehensive solution to the illegal immigration problem. If you've lived in California, and I honestly believe this, if you're from Texas or you're from Arizona, unless you're from Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, unless you're from a border state, California, you legitimately don't understand the illegal immigration issue. Because the fact is that, you know, everybody that I know, probably including my parents, at one point employed an illegal immigrant to do something. And the illegal immigrants who are, you know, and it's not fair, by the way, I really don't believe in E-Verify, because I don't think it's fair to put an obligation on businesses that the government is unwilling to take on itself. It's not the job of businesses to enforce federal immigration law, it's the job of the federal government to enforce federal immigration law. So, they don't do that. Well, that's why we've got to vote people in who do. The problem with the DREAM Act is that there are multiple problems with it. It doesn't have stringent enough requirements in terms of are the people who are entering material good for the society. It doesn't just matter. Look, if I were living in Mexico, I would jump that border in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Because that country is horrible and this country is fantastic. And I wouldn't be doing it just to get on the benefits. And I think a lot of people who come here don't do it to get on the benefits. So some of them do, a lot of them don't. That doesn't mean that you have a right to be here. Every country has to pick and choose which immigrants it feels are going to best service the society around them and contribute to the society around them in positive ways. When you have, this is especially dangerous in a society where you have tremendous welfare benefits and federal benefits and state benefits. It used to be, when my great-great-grandparents came here in 1907, right, from Russia and Lithuania, when they came here, there were none of these benefits. And the first thing they did in their houses is they said to their kids, you're not allowed to speak Yiddish anymore, you will speak English.
Right.
And then you will go out and you will get a job. And you will get educated. Right? And this has been true for immigrant populations since the beginning. Since the beginning of benefits, you have enclaves of immigrants all over the country who don't feel the need to integrate into the surrounding society. So we have one of two solutions. One is to wildly restrict immigration so you don't have a lot of people living off the system, which is not something that I really like a lot. The other is to wildly restrict the benefits, the social welfare and safety net benefits that are available to people who don't do a lot of work. And that to me is a more sustainable answer, because the truth is, look at Europe. We need more people, not less. We need better human material, not less. What we do need, though, is less incentives for people to be, bad workers or be moochers or to sit there and just take a check.
Hi. My husband and I are Jewish. We are very pro-Israel, very. We belong to a Reform synagogue,
Oh, which one?
university.
Okay.
Wait.
Yeah. University.
There are probably 5% of us who are not liberal,
Right.
maybe less.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in the closet, most of them.
Mm-hmm.
We're afraid.
We pulled some of them out, but they don't speak.
Right.
And my question to you is, and I have a lot of friends who are all liberals, we don't even discuss politics, we can't, because it just doesn't work. I mean, all these
Yeah.
wonderful suggestions you made.
I've been to a Passover Seder, I understand.
Forget about it. But my question to you is, why, and even the rabbis vote.
Mostly the rabbi, yes.
Oh,
Well, I know the rabbi.
And
Hey, go ahead.
I asked one of the rabbis who spoke at our temple one time, and I said, why do you vote for Obama? He says, because he's so anti-Israel. He said, well, there's other reasons I vote for Obama. Our rabbi says this to me, who lives part of his life in Israel. But my question again is, why do so many Jews vote for Obama?
Okay, this is going to be a really harsh answer, but it's the really only true answer because they do not give a damn about Judaism, period, end of story. That's the real answer. And nobody will, that's pure unvarnished truth. Because the fact is this, if you believe in Judaism, there are really no major Jewish principles that fall in line either with the Democratic Party agenda or that fall in line with the idea that you're going to put Israel low down on your list of priorities. Any Jew who thinks that the pro-choice position is more important than the pro-Israel position misconstrues both Judaism and the political scene. Because the fact is that, for those who don't know, Judaism is a pro-life religion. Judaism is an anti-same-sex marriage religion. Judaism is the foundation of Christianity, right? I mean, until we get to the point where Moses dies, right? Basically, we're together, and then we part ways. But for the first half of that, for the Pentateuch, we're all together, right? Yeah, exactly. So here's the deal. Yeah, Christ was actually an Orthodox Jew, but here's the deal. The way that this works, and a lot of Jews don't like to accept this, including my relatives. They're once-a-year Jews. They're Jews who like to go to synagogue on Yom Kippur. They like to eat a bagel. They're cultural Jews. They're people who enjoy the feeling of being a minority in America. But they imbibe with their parents' pathological fear of Christianity, which they got from their great-grandparents back in Europe. European brand of Christianity, very different from the U.S. brand of Christianity, which is unbelievably pro-Israel. The greatest allies Israel has ever had and ever will have are the evangelical Christians of the United States. Jews just don't see that. So the answer to your question is, if they're not swayed by the pro-Israel argument, maybe you can get them on the economic argument, but they're real tough to get. And I think that what you're seeing now, it's interesting. I think a lot of Jews who didn't think they cared so much about Israel, didn't think they cared a lot about the pro-Israel argument, I think you're seeing a lot of mind switch, because 78% of the Jewish vote went for Obama last time. He's only going to get about 60% this time. I think there are a lot of Jews who are really starting to feel, oh boy, this could really be under threat.
60% is a whole lot.
So then why is about 50% of the Orthodox community, that's just anecdotal, of the Orthodox Jewish community still supports Obama?
It's not true. It's not true. It's 80-20 Republican.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it may be higher than that. If you look in the Hasidic community, especially, you remember there was the News Corps scandal in New York when Hillary was running for Senate. The reason that was a scandal is because there was a little pocket of Hasidic Jews who voted 100% for Hillary. Because a member of the community was released from prison by it was a trade of votes for pardons by the Clintons, and they released somebody from that community. And that little enclave of Jews voted completely for Hillary. And the reason that was a scandal, the reason that was even detected, is because 100% of the surrounding Jewish community voted for Rick Lazio. And that one little enclave voted entirely for Clinton, which made him pretty conspicuous. The fact is that if you go to an Orthodox shul, and I'm talking about like everything from modern Orthodox on up, I'm not talking conservative Reform Jews. If you go to a modern Orthodox shul on up, modern, if you're talking about, the people you see wearing black hats around the city, at least 80% of them vote Republican. At least, maybe higher. Yes.
Yep.
Oh, Obama has a 5% approval rating in Israel. 5, really.
That.
The question I have is that you hear this inane argument over and over again out of Obama's mouth and a lot of...
Oh, which one? There are a bunch.
Regarding the tax cuts, is that how can we give tax cuts to people when there's no way to pay for them? I mean, it's inanity on its face.
Yeah.
It's people's money, but how do you best answer that massive illogic?
Yeah, well, I mean, that one you just have to answer. Well, there are two ways to answer the illogic, actually. The first way to answer it is to go directly at the illogic of it's not your money in the first place. So how is a tax cut something you afford? You're taking my money and giving me back a little bit of it in something you can afford? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense on the face of it, which is what you're saying. The other way is to argue that the only time the economy grows, and this is a very practical, pragmatic argument, the only time the economy grows at record rates is when you cut taxes. Even according to Bill Clinton. You hear this from liberals all the time. Liberals always, oh, let's go back to the halcyon Clinton tax rates, the magical Clinton tax rates that produced 10 years of uninterrupted growth. Well, okay, here's what happened. In the first couple of years of Clinton's tenure, forgive me, in the first couple of years of Clinton's tenure, he raised taxes, one of the single largest tax increases in American history. The economy was continuing to grow because we were in the aftermath of the Reagan boom. We'd already started the upswing from, look back at the stats, we'd already started the upswing in George H.W. Bush's economy. It continued, and the fact is that the Soviet Union had gone down, so we had a lot more money to spend on things that were not military. We were able to cut the military budget in a major way. In the first few years, from 1992 to 1995, the average hourly wage, the wage rate in the United States rose by 2 cents in the first 3 years, 2 cents. And it was averaging, I think, it was 3.2% annual growth. And after the 94 elections, Clinton, because he's not Obama, and is smart enough to recognize that he had to move back toward the center if he wanted to maintain his re-election attempt, he cut taxes, one of the biggest single tax decreases in American history. He cut the capital gains tax in a major way in 1995. What happened? Tremendous upswing in growth, 4.2% average annual growth from there to the end of the decade. Also inflationary policy from the Fed. But it was really the tax cuts that drove this and lack of spending from Republican Congress. So according to both JFK and Clinton, who are their two favorite presidents of the 20th century, I think JFK and Clinton probably eclipsed FDR at this point. Both of those presidents were big tax cutters, not big tax increasers. And in 1995, Bill Clinton had one thing to say about his tax increases, which was, they were too large, I shouldn't have done it.
I want to know how much influence Nancy Pelosi had on Obamacare.
Are we blaming the wrong person?
No, we're blaming all the right people. I mean, Nancy Pelosi didn't read the bill. Obama didn't read the bill. I mean, the people who wrote the bill were the unions and the union lawyers. So, I think that we all blame Nancy Pelosi exactly the right amount, which is a lot, because she's horrible. Let's put it this way, she is not pushing Obama to the left. She and Obama are arm in arm, in lockstep, walking down, the magic aisle of the Soviet Union here. I mean, a slight exaggeration, but they are both wildly left. And President Obama ideologically and Nancy Pelosi ideologically are no different whatsoever. And they're both non-transparent, and they both don't give a damn about what the American people think. Oh, actually, let me get this lady back here.
I heard today that there is like an anarchist group that's going to target both of the conventions. And I'm wondering which party will be most smeared by those, because will they be associated with the Occupy LA, Occupy whatever?
Yeah. I mean, the occupiers are going to show up at both places. Everybody recognizes, I think even the media recognizes that Occupy is a phenomenon of the left. And they recognize that it was a strain gone bad. They thought that they were going to be able to control it. It was all astroturf, by the way. The unions are paying for largely what goes on at Occupy. And if you ever went down to Occupy, I went down, I spent some time down there hanging with the Cretans at Occupy Los Angeles. It was actually a fascinating experience. I went down there on the same day that my wife received her citizenship from the United States. Because she's an Israeli immigrant, and she'd been here for for 10 years. And she was obviously extremely excited, and to actually be able to, she came out, she says, what am I allowed to do now that I'm a citizen? I said, you're allowed to vote. She says, what else am I allowed to do? I said, nothing. Basically exactly the same as it was before, except now you can vote. Which is one of the problems in this country. But she was super excited, obviously, because it's a tremendous honor. It's the honor of a lifetime to become a member of this country. You walk down to Occupy, and you are looking at the worst bunch of just moral degenerates and ideological, nonsensical morons. I mean, really, the collective IQ of this place couldn't have lit up a small green energy light bulb. And you walk down there, and nobody's showering, and they've got their socialist signs out, they've got their my favorite sign, my single favorite sign at the Occupy. This is great, this is so good. I was walking through Occupy, and there to the side is an empty desk. And I look at the desk, and on the desk, there is a sign. And the sign says, the sign essentially says, this is the lending library, the technology lending library for Occupy. Right? And then, but it's empty, there's no one there. And next to it, there's another sign. And it says, I've had to shut down the lending library because, as it turns out, everybody is stealing my stuff. So I am leaving everything, and I'm going back to San Francisco. I can't believe you people. P.S. Does anyone have marijuana? That's Occupy. And that was the movement that President Obama endorsed. This is the movement that he wanted to lead this movement. This was supposed to be his shock troops, to fight the Tea Party. And then you saw the left media trying to turn it into, it's the Tea Party versus Occupy. Man, you want to have that battle? Let's do that anytime. Well, we can talk about our great, wonderful mayor. Yeah, his $238 million deficit, $27 billion unfunded liability, city of LA. It's the best city in the world.
Hi, I'm Scott from Democracy Broadcasting News, and I also publish a conservative Jewish video blog called YouTube.
Oh,
cool. One of the reasons that Jewish people have been led so left for so long is that the media, the press that they're given in their towns is largely run by liberals and leftists.
Correct.
Do you agree?
Yes.
Including the Jewish Journal here in LA.
Oh, hell yes. But although I have to say that the Jewish Journal, which, to be honest, about 5-6 years ago, we used to call the Jewish Urinal. The Jewish Journal has been, they've been making strides, shall we say. Dennis Prager now writes for them. David Suissa writes a very legitimate column for them. Very good column for them. And there are a bunch of different columnists. It's not a Rob Eshman show anymore, so they've gotten a little better, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And so to that point, and Florida is a swing state, important in this election.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you read, Alan Bergstein is a former New York City retired principal who's in Florida, who was having the debate, is Romney or Obama better for Jews?
Mm-hmm.
And the leftists shut down the Jewish Community Center. He called it the 1932 Munich beer hall.
And they just shut down. Yeah, well, no, Jews are their own worst enemies on this stuff. They absolutely are. And liberal Jews are, they are not, they want to use the fact that they were born Jewish as an excuse to not talk about actual Jewish values. And it's disgraceful. It's disgraceful.
Dan, when you were discussing Obamacare, you made a very good point. And it says that the insurance companies will suffer.
Yes.
You're having said that, I would ask, why is it then that the health insurance companies haven't complained about Obamacare?
Well, I mean, initially they did complain about Obamacare, and then they cut a deal with Obamacare. Obamacare limits their liability to $80 billion.
But they're not now.
They're not now because initially there's going to be a big upswing in profit for them because a lot of people are going to be forced to pay in. Unfortunately, a lot of these companies, and this is because this is one of the problems in general with large, widely dispersed public ownership of companies, and it's almost unsolvable in some cases, is that the CEOs of a lot of these companies are looking for that short-term gain. They're looking for the next year's profit to go up. They're not looking 10 years down the line what's going to happen. They're figuring, look, this is going to happen one way or another. We might as well play ball, or you never know what the government's going to do. And you've seen that. I mean, a lot of CEOs live in fear of President Obama. When the banks when President Obama had a meeting with the banks and he started ramming down their throats particular lending standards, he didn't let a bunch of banks pay back the TARP bailout money that they'd gotten initially because he wanted to exercise more authority over them. When he had his initial meeting with the banks, he actually said to them, I'm the only thing standing between you and the pitchforks, right? Which is a variation on the theme, nice business you got there, shame if something happened to it. So, I think a lot of the insurance companies are scared. I think a lot of the insurance companies also see a significant short-term profit, but they're not looking long-term because, hell, they're abiding by the single most pernicious statement in the history of economics, the John Maynard Keynes line that in the long run we're all dead. Well, if in the long run we're all dead, then we might as well just shoot ourselves now and do nothing because it's a liberal idea that in the long run we're all dead. The conservative idea we have to build for the future. And so the problem is you have a lot of CEOs who are tied in with the Obama administration. They're heavily regulated. They have to play ball. I don't know if there's a single more regulated business in America than the health insurance industry. It's ridiculously regulated. The profit margin in health insurance is not high. I think it's 3%. It's not a massive profit maker. So. Let's see who. Okay.
I have a couple really quick questions. One is, I wonder if you can expand Occupy Unmasked and Katie Breitbart. I heard much about Katie Breitbart, but Occupy Unmasked, I know that they had gotten a distribution.
Yeah, well, you can talk to Steve. Steve Bannon, who's going to come speak here. Steve was the director of Occupy Unmasked, and so I'm sure he'll talk a lot about that. And it's coming. We've already started doing premiere events on that. Hating Breitbart, I believe, is premiering in the next couple of weeks, and it's great. I mean, if you knew Andrew, if you loved Andrew, I always said about Andrew that when he died, and it was devastating for a lot of folks, including me. When he died, 100 million people mourned, and 95 million of them had lunch with him at some point. Andrew was maybe the most garrulous human being who ever lived. And he was a wonderful force for life. He was, as I said at a wake service forum, I said that he was Diogenes carrying a torch around, in search for an honest man. But if you miss Andrew, and if you were inspired by Andrew, that movie should be out soon. I've seen it. It's really good. It's really good. Hating Breitbart.
I just wanted to know what your thoughts are.
Hating, yeah.
I wanted to know your thoughts on the polls. I mean, it's frustrating.
All over the place, right? Yeah, Gallup today has Romney up 47-45. There's another poll up today, same day, with Obama up 48-44. You're seeing in swing states. I was reading a study actually just before I got up here. There's a study from the University of Colorado that is encouraging. It says that if they use economic modeling, and they haven't been wrong since 1980, well, I guess the study started in 1980, that Romney will win 320 electoral votes. It'll be a blowout, according to them. Hopefully that's right. This is going to look a lot like, this is going to look. My feeling is it's going to look a lot like Reagan-Carter. It's going to be very close until the last 3 weeks of this election cycle, and then it's going to blow apart, one way or another. But I think it will blow away in our direction because I think that in the end, I have enough faith in the American people to recognize the danger that we're in. And it's a dangerous proposition to say that these days, because a lot of the American people is just completely disconnected from the real economy because they're on benefits or because they're working with government agencies or whatnot. But in the end, I trust the American people to make the right decision. Even though I think they made the wrong one in the last election cycle, I see why they made it. It was for the wrong reasons. But I think that their heart was in the right place, their head was in the wrong place. I think they're going to correct that mistake come November.
Would you mention the movie 2016? Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet. I really am looking forward to it. I've read D'Souza's book.
Dennis Prager says that it is the best documentary he has ever seen.
Well, if Dennis says that, I'm with Dennis then. So Dennis is great.
We're allowed to see it.
It's incredible. It's really, I want to see it again. It's great.
I just had a quick question. What's your best advice? What's your best advice about how to convince our liberal friends that Election Day really is November 8th?
Well, if there's one thing that we've learned over the past 4 years, it's that liberals are horrible at math. So, there is that shot.